Chapter 12. Friday mid-afternoon. After giving Mac some answers, not really having anything much to offer, she hung up the phone. She'd finally convinced him that she knew absolutely nothing about the case, but she would look into it. Don't bother, he'd warned her. Enough is going on in your life. You focus on those antiques. I'd love to, she said, but it'll hardly be a fast answer. Maybe it is, he'd said. If Fen Gunderson didn't contact you yet and he said he would, then you should contact him. I'll have to check, she said. He might have left me a message. Find out, he said. And by the way, my work schedule has been changed. I have Sunday and Monday off next week. We're short-staffed this week, so I offered to work tomorrow. So I can't help you on Saturday. Okay. When do you want me to work at your mom's house? She couldn't understand where the week had gone. If Sunday works for you, he said, then I can pay you on Monday when I come over for your first cooking lesson. Oh, that sounds even better, she said brightly. I'll be sure to stop by Sunday. He hung up the phone. Sitting in place for a long moment, she then couldn't resist. She grabbed her laptop to research the case of Fen Gunderson's missing grandson. The information was sparse, though many of the newspapers tried to blow it up, making a tiny bit of information into something more newsworthy. She went through as many articles as she could find, wondering if she should try the library archives again. It was about the only way to go back that far to see if anything helpful could be found in the old articles. Mac wouldn't give her a copy of the case file, and that was too damn bad. She didn't want to ask Fen, hurting the old man by bringing up bad memories. It may have been a long time ago, but some pain just never went away. She checked the time, realizing it was 8 o'clock. It seems like it was just 8 o'clock in the morning, she muttered. She had an hour before the library closed, according to the internet. Each day of the week seemed to have a different closing time. Why couldn't it be the same every day? She grabbed her keys and drove away, noticing the news reporters were finally gone from her yard. She laughed out loud. They don't even know I'm the one who found Celeste's body. Still chuckling to herself, she went around the few corners to get to the library. She parked and walked inside. The librarian, Linda Linkett, raised her head and frowned. What are you here for? Doreen's heart sank. Hey, don't I even get a smile and hello? She said with a light sense of humor. Linda pulled her glasses down on her nose so she could peer over the top of them. It depends what you're here for. Books, she snapped. She walked past Linda and headed to the popular fiction section. Just for show, she picked up 2 that looked interesting, looked at the back cover blurbs and put one back, keeping one. Then she headed to the microfiche machine. She moved back in time to 20 years ago. She should have asked Mac for an exact date, but he hadn't been happy to give her anything. She flicked through as many of the articles as she could, but it was frustrating because she couldn't find anything with the Gunderson name. But then, maybe the grandson's last name wasn't Gunderson. What are you looking for? Linda asked from behind her. Information on Fen Gunderson's missing grandson, she said. Linda's eyebrows slowly rose toward her hairline and she shrugged. Fen's doing me a favor. I just wondered if I could do something to ease the pain of his loss. Linda looked even more surprised, shrugging again. Still feeling like she had to explain herself, Doreen said, I'm trying to figure out something I can do. I know that's a huge loss in his life, and maybe I can do something to memorialize his grandson's life or to give Fen closure. That might make him happier or give him some peace, she said lamely. It was a good idea. She didn't know if other people had done it or not. She imagined his friends and family had, way back when it originally happened. But of course, she had not been part of his life then. He wouldn't even know she had heard about the case. You're not far enough back, Linda said, motioning at the microfiche. It was closer to 30 years ago now. You're also looking for Gunderson's last name. But his daughter married Martin Shore. His little boy was Paul Shore. Ah. Doreen wrote it down on her notepad and thanked the woman. She went back to the microfiche, hoping Linda would leave. But she stood here, watching as Doreen searched through 29-year-old newspapers. Finally, she found an article entitled "Missing Boy from Kelowna." She read it through. "It's so sad," she whispered. "It was devastating for all of us at the time. He was the second or third to go missing that year," Linda said. "I knew Paul too. I was his piano teacher." She turned to face Linda, seeing the person she was inside for once and not just the guardian of the information Doreen was hunting down. "I'm sorry," she said sincerely. "I can't imagine." Linda nodded stiffly. "Whatever you do, be sensitive. It's a sore spot for many of us." She turned on her heels and walked away. Relieved the woman wasn't looking over her shoulder anymore, Doreen quickly read through the article once more, writing down a few bits of information, but there was almost nothing said. People reported seeing the boy get into a large beat-up white truck belonging to the handyman, Henry Huberts, who disappeared at the same time. Foul play was suspected. The little boy never showed up again. She just couldn't imagine the heartache the parents and the whole family had gone through. Knowing that your little boy came home at a specific time every day, you looked outside expecting him to arrive, or you worried. She researched a little more, getting as much as she could, but there just didn't appear to be anything more. It was like any normal day, except the little boy headed home from school and never made it. He just dropped off the face of the earth. The end. She shook her head. "No way to find closure with that," she muttered. She stood with her notebook, looked at the piece of popular fiction she'd picked up, walked to the front and checked it out. Linda handed it back to Doreen and said, "I don't know how, with all the stuff you seem to do as your hobbies, you have time to read these mystery books too." "They intrigue me," she said honestly. "I love the puzzle part of them." With that, she returned to her car. Back home, she decided it was time to turn in for the night. So much was going on and her mind was buzzing. She thought maybe the book in her hand might be the answer to getting a good night's sleep. But as soon as she got into bed, her mind buzzed harder. She groaned, got out bed, crept downstairs, not sure why she was creeping when it was her own house. Just to make her feel better, she stomped all the way back up. As she got to the top, she swore she heard a door shut. She froze. Muggs came off the bed and barked like a madman at her feet. He raced downstairs. Horrified, she followed him. "What's the matter, Muggs?" She walked to the fireplace and picked up the poker. She almost chuckled. It was just such a bad movie response that it was hard to resist. Muggs barked as he circled the living room, going into the kitchen and the dining room. Then he headed back toward the front door. "Do you know anything at all?" she asked him. "Or are you seriously just barking for the sake of barking?" He went to the large hutch and continued to bark. The hutch had 2 large doors. She did not want to open either and find an intruder. But she didn't have a whole lot of choice. With the poker in hand, she opened one side of the hutch. Muggs went up to it and sniffed. Only shelving was inside. "See? It's nothing," she said. "Absolutely nothing." But just to be sure, she checked that the front and back doors of the house were locked. Taking Mac's advice, she grabbed a chair and propped it under the front door, then repeated with another chair at the back door. She didn't know if it would make any difference, but she felt better. She marched back upstairs, determined not to let the old house spook her. Of course, now that she knew about the antiques, just leaving her house was hard enough. And to think about somebody getting in and knowing about the antiques terrified her. She wondered if she should contact a security company. But that would be an added expense. Yet, it would be foolhardy not to spend a few bucks a month on a service that protected thousands of dollars worth of expensive antiques. She'd look into that more later. Meanwhile, would Fen Gunderson have told anyone? He might have seemed like a nice old man, but old guys love to talk. Maybe he said something to somebody who said something to somebody else, and now, all of a sudden, her house had been targeted.